ESPN has shocked Cougar Nation by naming BYU one of a select group of teams that can make the college football playoff this fall despite their tumultuous offseason.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. I'm Jake Hatch, executive producer of the KSL Sports Zone in Salt Lake City, Utah, and a 14-year credentialed media member at BYU. I am your resident expert and insider as this podcast host, and as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Coming up on today's show, we're going to talk about BYU's chances of making the college football playoff and why ESPN believes they're much higher than I think many of us, quite frankly, think they are. Then we're going to talk about Dean Rueckert and his commitment to the BYU basketball program and why it's a great start to the next recruiting cycle for Kevin Young and company. And we'll finish up today on the recruiting front as well, but albeit with BYU football as BYU loses a 2026 recruit and Canel Sweetwine. And what do they do now at the quarterback position in this upcoming recruiting cycle? All right, so let's dive right in on today's show. And if you did not see this recently, Heather Dinich from ESPN, she is their college football playoff insider. And her whole job is to know everything there is to know about the college football playoff. Now, ESPN is like obviously right in bed with the college football playoff as the direct TV entity that works with the playoff. They air most of the games. They have sub-licensed to one or two, if I recall correctly, to TNT. But it is Heather Dinich's job to examine the college football playoff from all angles, to know about the latest changes or potential changes to the playoff, but also to know the teams that could be playing in said playoff at any given time. And she has put out a list on ESPN recently that includes, count them, 32 teams, as she mentions, the highest, the most in the college football playoff era that have more than a 10% chance of making the college football playoff. Well, why in the heck am I bringing this up on a BYU-centric podcast, you may ask? It's because BYU is one of those 32 teams. Yes, you heard that right. The Cougars have a better than 10% chance of making the playoff field, according to what they call the All-State Playoff Predictor. Now, this is just to make the playoff. If you want to legitimately win the playoff, that's a whole nother set of analytics. And according to ESPN, BYU's chances of making the playoff, and you have to scroll down this list a little bit, the number 27 in these 32 teams. But as they say, BYU's chances of making the college football playoff include 12.6% chance of making the actual playoff field of the 12 teams, but then win the national title, a paltry 0.1%. Now, you always say there's a chance, we'll see what happens. But the bigger point to be made here is BYU has actually got better odds than I think I would have even given them, considering the type of offseason they had, losing their starting quarterback and the like. But ESPN apparently likes BYU better than some school named Utah. Yeah, Utah's not on this list, everybody. It's a bit surprising because if you believe the people up north and some certain national media members, they think BYU is going to roar right back to the top of the Big 12 conference and be a legit college football playoff title participant / contender. Now, ultimately, time will tell to see if that's the truth. And I think that Utah's going to be plenty good. I think they'll bounce back from that 5-7 season a year ago. But at the same time, right now, the analytics say that Utah is not among the 32 teams who have a realistic shot in their mind, better than 10% of making the playoff field, and the BYU Cougars do. Now, as Heather Dinich says here, she has a first part of these analytics, say that she whether agree or she disagrees with the ESPN analytics about each of these teams' chances to make the playoff field. She says she disagrees with BYU because she says this: BYU has a strong chance to win the Big 12. Because BYU has a strong chance to win the Big 12, it should be higher on this list. But how much higher depends on the Cougars look, how the Cougars look without quarterback Jake Retzloff. Cougars will return their leading rusher LJ Martin and wide receiver Chase Roberts. She also mentions that BYU's defense was also one of the best in the country last year at snagging turnovers. The returning talent will help ease the transition of whoever replaces Retzloff as the starter. She then goes on with each team for their toughest test of the season. And you might be thinking, okay, well, who did she pick? Did she pick Iowa State a week after Utah? Did she pick the Utah game? No, she actually waits for a few weeks after that and goes with the November 8th road game at Texas Tech. She mentions this: the Cougars will have a bye week to prepare for this, but it's still the second straight tough road trip following the October 25th game at Iowa State. As she mentions, ESPN's FPI projects that BYU will lose both of those games, but if the Cougars can't win in Ames, the trip to Texas Tech becomes even more consequential. She then goes on to say what the committee will like about BYU. This: 1 loss or better. BYU finished 10-2 last year, good enough for number 17 on selection day of the college football playoff. She mentions BYU probably has to win the Big 12 to earn a playoff spot, and it can't lose to an opponent that it's supposed to beat, like Kansas last year. If BYU is going to have any shot at an at-large bid, its ideal scenario would be as a 1-loss Big 12 runner-up with that lone loss coming in the conference championship game. That means BYU's running the table in the regular season, which seems a bit of a stretch. But beyond that, she also adds this. If BYU finishes with 2 losses, though, and no Big 12 title, it's probably going to land where it did last year in a regular bowl game. So there you go. She also adds this, what the committee won't like about BYU, and that is the non-conference schedule. BYU starts September against Portland State, Stanford, and East Carolina, none of which will help the Cougars' playoff resume. BYU is the number 74 schedule in the country, and while the September slate might be ideal to break in a new starting quarterback, an early loss or an ugly win to an unranked opponent will still be remembered in the committee meeting room come the end of the season. So I think we can all acknowledge that there are ups and downs in this analysis, but the numbers say BYU is a bona fide college football playoff contender, and it's among, as she mentions, 32 teams who they believe have a shot at this. Now, it appears it would take a pretty special season for BYU to accomplish that, but I think that if ESPN is to be believed here, I think along with many of you out there in Cougar Nation, may have been underrating this BYU basketball team. We'll talk about basketball in a minute. Football team. Basketball is its own storyline. But the bigger point is, yes, it's probably going to take something magical for BYU. And heck, if it is a 10-2 season where BYU, if the Big 12 is as dog-eat-dog as some believe it to be, and they emerge on top as the college football playoff entrant because they won the Big 12, hey, you'll take it any which way you can get it. That's pretty impressive that all things considered, even with Jake Retzlaff leaving, even losing guys like a Harrison Taggart, a Keelan Marion, a Darius Lassiter, etc., ESPN still believes in the BYU Cougars so much that they are on a list of 32 teams to make the college football playoff, and the Utah Utes are not. Now, there are a number of other Big 12 teams on this list. Baylor's at number 29. You also have TCU at 31. The final team actually in the field here is Texas Tech with a 10.3% chance of making the playoff. Just in front of BYU, it's the Kansas Jayhawks. You look 2 places up at 24. The Arizona State Sun Devils, the defending champ in the Big 12. So they've got a lot of Big 12 teams who have hopes, at least, of making the college football playoff here, but I'm impressed. I actually can respect that ESPN has a bullish mentality of this BYU football team, and the bigger point is they think that BYU's got a better shot than I would have given them, quite honestly. SMU's on this list, and you want a funny little tidbit. Kansas State, I believe, is the highest. Yeah, the highest at 17 of Big 12 teams. At number 16, though, they mentioned a little old team called the Tulane Green Wave. Yes, the team that Jake Retzlaff is potentially going to start for. It sure looks like he is in line to be their starting quarterback come the start of their season. They mentioned that the chance of making the playoff for the Tulane Green Wave is 24.3%, with a chance to win the national title of 0.2%. They think they're just a tick above BYU's chances of winning the national title. But can you imagine BYU making the playoff field and then potentially in the first or second round, there's this team called Tulane that BYU's facing. And oh, by the way, it's BYU's former starting quarterback as the face of the Tulane Green Wave going up against his former team. Hey, the storylines write themselves sometimes, everybody, but it's something to keep an eye on, even if it seems like it's a bit of a stretch to see that happening. But as the show Dumb and Dumber, the movie's Dumb and Dumber says, so you're saying there's a chance. So there you go. That's what BYU's chances of making the playoff field look like. I have stumbled over my words on BYU basketball because I'm very excited to talk next about a big pickup for the BYU basketball team. That's Dean Rueckert coming from Timpview High School to BYU. He kicks off BYU's 2026 recruiting class as their first commit in the upcoming recruiting cycle. What does it mean for Kevin Young to have a guy who's literally coming just down the street to the BYU basketball program? Well, I think it says a lot, and we'll explain more why next. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Now, if you're out there trying to stay on top of your money, the best part about this is managing your money has never been easier than doing it with our friends at Monarch Money. Whether you're growing your savings, planning on a big purchase, or really anything else when it comes to your finances, it puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. The best part is Monarch Money is more than just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center tracking all of your accounts, investments, and spending all in one place. The best part is, in addition to managing your money, You're also building wealth because you can monitor it all at a glance and understand exactly where you stand on every front. The best part is it brings it all in-house. And the best part is if you have specific categories you want to track, whether it's eating out, your streaming services, your cable TV, whatever it is, they can help you check that and make sure that you're not spending more than you should, or understand that, hey, I'm spending a way lot more in this category. I need to cut back on it a little bit. So take control of your finances and do it with our friends at Monarch Money. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, promo code LOCKEDONCollege, and get half off your first year. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Hope you all are doing fantastic out there in Cougar Nation. Thank you for subscribing, rating, reviewing, and sharing this with your family and friends. Really, really big season, I should say. Just kind of a whole thought there about BYU football upcoming, and then shortly thereafter, BYU men's basketball. And let's be honest, Cougar fans, y'all like BYU sports in general. I'm talking volleyball, cross country, baseball, softball, swimming, tennis, whatever it is. BYU fans, you're in it with the Cougars across the spectrum, and it's a big year upcoming for BYU sports, and we'll have it all for you guys right here on this podcast. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on with BYU basketball. Last night, if you missed it, Dean Rueckert from Timpview High School committed to the BYU basketball program. Now, it seemed like for a long time there, he was BYU's to lose, and there is some thought out there, and I've had it sent to me a couple of times, asking me, hey, Jake, what in the world is Kevin Young doing? Is he ignoring in-state recruits? And my response has always been, no, he's not. But the thing about Kevin Young is, and I think everybody who's paid attention to what Kevin Young's building with the BYU basketball program, if you just look at how he's gone about building this roster, you understand that he wants top flight talent, and he is not going to rest until he finds the guys that he believes are going to give him the best chance to win. But more importantly than that, he wants guys in this program they can develop into pros. He said he wanted to make BYU an NBA type factory. He wanted guys to be able to come here, win at a high level, but also develop their games to where they jump to the NBA level, and they're as best prepared as they possibly can be for the next level. Look at Jaeger Dielman just recently. Look at AJ DeBonson this upcoming season. He's expected to be in the mix for the number 1 overall selection in the NBA draft next spring. Well, Dean Rueckert decided, you know what? I don't want to go very far from home. I'm going to go right down the road, because quite literally, Timpview High School, any of you who know the layout of Provo City, know that Timpview High School is no more than a 5-minute drive from BYU's campus. And Dean, he is right up the road from BYU, and Kevin Young did not ignore him. He wasn't overlooking him. Simply put, Kevin Young wants the best talent he can find. And if it's in Provo, Utah, literally a stone's throw away from the Marriott Center Annex, he's going to bring that talent into BYU and develop it. What the best thing about Dean is he fits exactly what BYU wants in a two-way wing player. He's 6'8", shoots the three at a very high level. I think it was Adam Finkelstein from CBS Sports last night pointed it out that he shot 36% in the Nike EYBL, which is one of the premier high school circuits in terms of top talent playing against each other. But beyond that, on catch and shoot wide open looks, nearly 50%, something like 46 or 47% on those catch and looks. So that's the thing about this is Dean is a high-level shooter, but beyond that, he's got defensive chops. He's not the biggest guy in the entire world. That's probably the one knock on his game right now. He's going to have to get stronger as he gets ready for Big 12 play, because you know how rough and tumble this league is. Teams are going to want to beat you up. And Dean, being 6'8", I think they list him at 180 or 190 pounds. If he can come to BYU 200, 205 pounds in a year's time, that's a great thing, because he will be better prepared to handle the rigors of the Big 12 at that point. But also, he's got defensive chops. There was a clip posted by Robbie McCombs showing him blocking Tyran Stokes, who's the number 1 overall recruit in this recruiting cycle. Dean is in the top 70. Last I saw from 24/7 Sports, he was 68th or 69th in those rankings. And he had a great block on Tyran Stokes. Just got up in his grill, went up with him, and just stuffed him at the top of his jumper. And it shows that he's unafraid of playing two ways here. He's not just a pure scorer, because if he was just that, I actually think Kevin Young may have been less inclined to take his commitment. But he comes to BYU with a lot to prove. And the bigger part about this is I think Dean's looking at it as a chance to play early on. As Robbie McCombs from Vanquish the Foe mentioned, it appears that Dean has plans to forego a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, of which he is a member. And hey, I'm not here to debate the merits of him skipping on a mission or not. That's not what I'm talking about here. But he's looking at it, I think, simply due to what BYU has in this upcoming season and the transition that will take place after it. Think about this. AJ DeBonce and Richie Saunders are going to move on. Nate Pickens is a grad transfer, moves on. Dawson Baker is a super senior, a grad senior, and moves on. There is going to be a dearth or an opening or multiple openings on the wing for BYU. And Dean's looking at it saying, hey, that's one of my spots. That's where I want to be. And I'm going to come into BYU with the full intention of being a guy that's going to play right away for the BYU basketball program. I can fully respect why he wants to forego a mission. And yes, some of you may think it's that he should go on a mission. Some of you may think it doesn't matter. Beyond that, I think he's looking just simply in basketball terms and saying there's an opportunity for me to come in and potentially play right away for the BYU basketball program. He's not going to be handed the role. Let's be very clear about that. He is going to enroll next April, much like AJ DeBonce did. He'll enroll for spring term, be able to go through the 7 weeks of workouts that BYU has allotted to them by the NCAA over the summer months. And then hopefully by the time school kicks off and then obviously the season gets going, so we're talking over a year from now, he'll be up to speed and potentially could be a starting wing for this BYU basketball team. I can understand exactly why he's thinking what he's thinking. And the best part about it is it answers a lot of those questions that Cougar fans, some of you have had out there about, hey, is Kevin Young ever going to recruit in-state beyond Utah Prep or Wasatch Academy? And B, is he going to recruit members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints? Well, Dean checks both of those boxes because quite literally, he plays at Timpview High School. As I mentioned, if you hit all the lights right, is it 2 minutes to get over to Timpview, or if you're coming vice versa from Timpview to BYU? It's a very, very short drive. And it shows that Kevin Young, while he is obviously looking at getting the top talent, whether it's nationally, internationally, or heck, anywhere he can find them, the best part about it is he found a guy literally a stone's throw away. He's bringing him into BYU, and Dean seems to be a BYU guy through and through. He wants to be a BYU. There were strong indications in the lead up to his commitment that it was BYU or bust for him. It sounded like it was Washington, who ultimately was the only other finalist for him. In fact, they were the only other team on his finalist list that he actually officially visited. So I could understand that BYU is where he wanted to be. He wanted his official visit at the tail end of last month, and I think Kevin Young and the vision BYU had for him sold him on. He said, you know what? I don't need to waste any more time. I know exactly where I want to be. I know exactly who I want to play for. And now BYU's got the kickoff to their 2026 recruiting cycle. And there's going to be a lot of names to monitor between now and the end of this recruiting cycle. There will be transfer portal guys. There'll be junior college guys. BYU obviously will be recruiting more high school talent. But I think Dean is a great kickoff to this recruiting cycle. And more importantly than that, he brings an element of he's a BYU guy and he's a Utah guy and he's going to represent for his hometown team, which I think some people fear might have been getting lost with Kevin Young, as I mentioned, looking nationally, if not internationally, for talent. Kevin Young's whole philosophy is he wants to win at a high level, but he also wants to have the best talent he can find. And yeah, if it comes from Provo, Utah, and Timpview High School, he's just as apt to take that as he is to go all the way to, let's say, heck, Zimbabwe or anywhere else in the world. I'm just thinking of just spitballing out there. He will scour the globe quite literally for the top talent. But if it's right there in his backyard, quite literally, go for it. Bring him in. And congratulations to Dean and his family. That's really, really cool to see that. If I'm not mistaken, his family, at least his dad, if I recall correctly, is a former BYU athlete. So carrying on a family legacy at BYU. It's obviously a cool thing when you see that happen. And congratulations to the Rueckert family and Dean's commitment. By the way, it goes by Dino. That's going to be a great nickname. Dino. I love that. I absolutely will be enjoying calling him Dino for years to come and looking forward to seeing him develop. I think he's got NBA upside. It may take 2 or 3 years to ultimately flourish into an NBA type talent, but that is there for him. He is not a guy that BYU is bringing in just to bring in. No, he has got legit talent and legit aspirations of playing at the top level of basketball, and for good reason, because he's got the game, it appears, to match that. All right, we'll finish up today's show on the I keep screwing up basketball and football. Back to the football front. BYU loses a commitment in the 2026 recruiting cycle. Kaneal Sweetwyne has backed off his pledge to BYU he made earlier this year. How much of a blow is it for BYU in the 2026 recruiting class? We'll get into that next, right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. It's time to fuel up and turn it up with the 5 Hour Energy Transfusion. It brings a bold new flavor, obviously, into a quick, energizing shot. And whether you're sinking birdies or just make memories of friends out on the golf course, this is a hole-in-one for your energy game. Let's be honest, some days on the course or off of it, you need that extra boost to just through the day, and that's where our friends at 5 Hour Energy come into the mix. Any of you who have been on the golf course have seen crazy shots. I can tell you, my younger brother at one point, he hit the 150-yard pole square on, and it came directly right back at him. Had he not dived out of the way, it would have smacked him square on in the face. There are crazy shots out there. They're miracles, or they're just absolutely just one-of-a-kind type shots like that one was. All of them are part of the experience. And that's part of the golf is about good times with good people and good flavors, of course. And that's where the grape ginger lime flavor of the transfusion version of 5 Hour Energy comes into the mix. It is the best option for you guys. If you go to 5hourenergy.com today, that is the number 5hourenergy.com. You can use the promo code LOCKEDONGOLF to receive 20% off your order. Offers only valid until September 30th on one order and cannot be used with other promotions. The code is not good on subscription orders either. But once again, whether you're meeting up with friends or trying to turn 18 holes into a full 36, get the energizing boost you need to power through. Order transfusion flavored 5 Hour Energy shots a day with our friends over at 5 Hour Energy. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Sorry, I'm dealing with a little bit of an internet issue. I don't know if it actually bumped or not, but nonetheless, thank you for being with us every single day. If you have not done so already, sign up for the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. If you have not done so already, get the inside scoop on all things BYU football. I'll be out at BYU football practice later on this morning. For those of you tuning in early on, later in the day, those notes that I have from our observation period will be available to our Insiders Group members first. And if you want to get that, join us today. You get a 14-day free trial to see if it's the right option for you guys, and just $5 a month after that to be a member of the group every single month. So join us today on the Locked On Cougars Insider Group. Link is in the show notes below, whether you're watching this on YouTube or listening to it wherever you get your podcasts. All right, before we go on today's show, some you call it disappointing news if you want. Kaneal Sweetwyne of Skyridge High School has reneged on his commitment to the BYU football program. He was a member of the 2026 recruiting cycle, a high-level 3-star, borderline 4-star talent at quarterback that BYU was excited to have in the fold. But I think as things continue to progress here, you bring in a guy like Bear Bachmeyer via the transfer portal, you get a commitment from 5-star prospect Ryder Lyons. I don't think it's all that surprising that Kaneal Sweetwyne is backed off this commitment for the BYU football program. Does that mean that he can't recommit at some point down the line for BYU? No, that doesn't mean that, but more often than not, when guys renege on a long-term commitment, because this young man, speaking of Kaneal, committed to BYU all the way back in February. He kind of surprised folks by committing so early on to the Cougars, but latched on with them, and it was expected to be the quarterback BYU took in the 2026 cycle. I know that Ryder Lyons is also a member of the 2026 class, but as many of you know, he plans on going on a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and he actually will be enrolling in 2027. So it left kind of a gap where Kaneal Sweetwyne factored in as BYU's 2026 QB, and Aaron Rueckert has been very blunt that he will take a quarterback every single recruiting cycle, and he's not going to back off that because, just simply put, transfer portal and this new era of college football, you got to keep that room as well stocked as you possibly can. Now, you also factor in guys like an Enoch Watson coming home off of a mission this coming offseason. Yeah, the quarterback room is going to be a little bit bloated and a little bit just in terms of the overall bodies. It's going to have a lot of guys in there. I think Kaneal Sweetwyne looked at it and said, you know what? I need to examine my options a little more fully. And I wish him nothing but the best. I can tell you this much. When he committed to BYU, I had a person in the recruiting sphere say that they thought Kaneal Sweetwyne was going to emerge this coming prep season, which kicks off a week from this Friday. They thought he was going to become the best quarterback in the state. They legitimately thought he had that type of talent in him. So we'll see if he can ultimately realize that. And if he does realize that, guess what? He is going to have no shortage of suitors for his services if he has that type of a big season for Skyridge High School. He's got a big arm. He's got great athleticism. He's listed at 6'3" or 6'4", depending on where you look, 190-ish pounds, and can really run. I've called some of his high school football games. I've been very impressed with his overall dual threat capability, but I think the biggest thing is he needed to hone is his arm and make it more of an accurate weapon. And I think so long as that proves to be the case this upcoming season, he's going to have options in the recruiting sphere. BYU, I'm sure, will continue to stay in touch with him. I know he's very close to the Gennaro Guilford family because Gennaro Guilford Jr., who is Gennaro Guilford, the BYU cornerbacks coach's son, also plays at Skyridge. And I know those two families are very close to one another. So, like I said, I'm not going to count out BYU potentially getting another commitment from Canel Sweetwine down the line. But I also understand why Canel is looking at his options here because I think he looks at the way BYU's been recruiting this position. They've got a 4-star in Bear Bachmeyer, who's technically a part of the 2025 cycle, who's already here on campus. You look at McKay Hillstead, Trayson Bourget, who have extra years of eligibility. I mentioned Enoch Watson, who's a high-level 3-star talent in his own right out of Arizona, coming home off of his mission. And then obviously the impending arrival down the line of Ryder Lyons. Yeah, you're going to have to fight for playing time. And it's going to be a really interesting battle to see who emerges at the top of some of these QB battles in days to come for the BYU football program. But I also going to understand that Canel Sweetwine, I'm not saying he's not a competitor. I think he's just looking out for his best interest and saying, hey, I need to see what my other options are. I respect it. I understand it. And it now leaves BYU having to go out there and finds a quarterback in the 2026 cycle. The good news is it's still early enough in the recruiting cycle period for Aaron Rueckert to go back to the drawing board, look at what other quarterbacks are on their list. Obviously, the transfer portal could come into effect as well once the season gets going because you start to see guys enter the transfer portal. And we all know that quarterbacks, they're very quick to jump when they don't feel like they're getting the playing time or the opportunity that they feel like they need to be afforded at various programs. So I'm not concerned that BYU can't backfill that spot in that recruiting class, in the 2026 class, whether it's a high school talent or whether it's a transfer portal guy or even a junior college transfer, should they find somebody that they think fits what they're looking for. The biggest thing here to understand is that the quarterback position for BYU looks like it's in pretty good hands for years to come, so long as the guys that they have recruited pan out. If Bear Bachmeyer works out, that's great. He could be a multi-year starter. By the time Ryder Lyons returns home from a mission, maybe he redshirts for a year, Bear Bachmeyer then exits stage right, and it's the Ryder Lyons show going forward beyond that. It's tough to obviously understand the unique dynamics across all this. Simply put, Canel Sweetwine could have decided that BYU wasn't for him anymore. But I think that Aaron Roderick, he's done a very, very fine job lately, in particular, at bringing in top shelf talent for that quarterback position. And I think he's quieted some of the doubters about his ability to recruit that position at a high level, because if you look at who he's recruited, I think he's answered all the questions about if he can bring in top shelf talent. You don't bring in a top 10 consensus quarterback like Ryder Lyons, or in the case of a guy like Bear Bachmeyer. That kid went to Stanford, but could have gone anywhere in this country, and BYU wanted him badly. And he hits the portal after everything that went down at Stanford, and Stanford's loss was a major, major gain for the BYU football program. And hey, Bear Bachmeyer's in the mix to be BYU starting quarterback as an 18-year-old true freshman. Shows you some pretty impressive talent from that young man, because a lot of people thought that I'll include myself in this. You look at the McKay Hillsteads and the Trayson Bourgets, where they had extra time in the system at BYU. They've gone through practices. They went through a spring ball and were battling for that backup position behind Jake Retzloff at the time. You would have thought that their experience alone would have given them a leg up over Bear Bachmeyer. And all he did once he enrolled in May at BYU was pick up the playbook as fast as anybody, because according to Aaron Roderick, he knows everything there is to know about the playbook. And really the only thing that's holding him back is getting time on the field with his teammates and making sure that he has the timing down, kind of the machinations of how BYU operates their offense. That shows that kid's got some talent. I can understand why Canel Sweetwine may have been looking at that saying, you know what? It may be in my best interest to see if I can find a better position for myself. And heck, maybe he comes back around at some point and says, you know what, BYU, you were the best option. I'm going to stick with y'all. And it would once again be welcome, because I think Canel has got a lot of talent and it would add to that quarterback room. But those QB battles in years to come for BYU, they're going to be ones for the ages, because the talent alone indicates there's a lot of really, really good players that BYU is going to have competing for playing time. And it's not going to be an easy climb to the top if you want to be BYU starting quarterback, at least it looks like in the near-term future. Obviously, things can change. We all know that in this day and age with NIL, transfer portal, and the like. But right now, on paper, BYU looks pretty well stocked for years to come, and I understand that the 2026 cycle might be without a QB for the time being. But have faith that Matt Mitchell is the assistant quarterbacks coach, and Aaron Roderick obviously is the QB's coach, and more importantly, the offensive coordinator. They will now go back to the drawing board and make sure that they cross their I's, dot their T's, and make sure that they have at least a guy or two in mind that they can recruit over the coming months, if not in the transfer portal cycle to come, to backfill that spot if Canel Sweetwine does indeed decide to go elsewhere with his recruitment. All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of the show. As always, you guys are the absolute best. Cannot thank you guys enough for your continued support of the show. Please continue to subscribe, rate, and review it. If you want those insider notes on BYU basketball, football practice, if I can get the two sports right today, nonetheless, as always, make sure you check out the Locked On Cougars Insider Group and become a member today to get that inside intel that you will not find anywhere else. But once again, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. And as always, thank you for being an everydayer right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.